What do you imagine when you think of the word beauty? We are naturally inclined to find beauty in things that remind us of naturality and safeness. Cleanliness, harmony, symmetry, delicacy. Something that displays those characteristics for us mean that they are good for us. Maybe you combine harmony and delicacy to visualize elegance, no matter if you refer to beauty in the human form or your surroundings, in your ideal place to inhabit. What about the items you possess to accentuate and showcase the kind of taste and sense of personal aesthetics to everyone else? What about unnatural color schemes, though, or harsh shapes, or injuries, rot, features that belong to deadly creatures for us? What about darkness and corruption, fear? These are clearly qualifiers of ugliness, which is the very thing we are adapted to avoid for our own benefit. It doesn't make a lot of sense to find ugliness beautiful, right? But yet, a lot of people will tell you their beauty standards consist of a lot of ugliness. Me being one of them. On the subject of my own beauty standards, I actually didn't used to find ugly things beautiful at all. Matter of fact, my standards were as safe and run of the mill as you could go, really. I wasn't a fan of anything horror related to start. I found stuff like Mortal Kombat too frightening to play. Even something like, for example, I don't know, Ray Aliens were the stuff of nightmare for me. I couldn't bear to even see those huge black almond shaped eyes at all. Oh. Even though they were fascinating at the same time. Yeah, that was the thing. I've always had a terrible arachnophobia, even though spiders are some of my favorite creatures. The only thing I could find appealing were the most by the book, softcore, harmonious, soothing standards you can imagine. And yet, since very early on, something started to spark. Nowadays, my ideas of beauty in a lot of cases lean more into totally the opposite of that. I can find beauty in things I wouldn't have even been able to understand as anything but depraved and rejectful at early age. Things that would have confused and terrified me. For me, it all started on. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment since it was more of a gradual and subtle thing than anything else I was aware of. Actually, I wasn't even aware of it at all. I think it all started really, really early on when, for example, Halloween became my favorite holiday in the year. The evenings around this part of the world have that orange, chilly, melancholic shade to them during autumn. The atmosphere becomes slightly spooky around 5 or 6 p.m. You see those tacky, creepy decorations on windows and fences and indoors or whatever in businesses. And on the 31st of October, you can dress up as another being. You can now be the creepy, scary thing yourself. Or something else. I mean, it doesn't have to be something creepy, but you can be something else. Something you wish you could be more often. It's all very empowering in small doses for a small child. It's basically an entire month to become that wolf, technically, for a couple of hours at the very end of it. I feel most of the kids that loved Halloween so much early on and ended up loving it just the same as adults might have been the most timid ones that needed that sense of empowering like that when they grew up. It left more of an impact, enough to get embedded in their subconscious. Most likely that's why monsters that consisted of a human transforming into a powerful, unhinged being were my most favorite ever, for example. Speaking of myself. Later on, the genres of movies or games that I could stand the least became my biggest obsessions. For example, Mortal Kombat, which was terrifying for me at first. The sounds, the excessive gore, the living forest stage. It was overload and stuff of nightmares for me when I was very little. Not to mention horror movies overall. But I was already kind of a loner kid as I was. Very shy and introverted. Being able to shrug those things off and even casually liking them was a rite of passage that made you automatically cool in the eyes of others. Instead of casually liking them and forgetting about them later on, like most of everybody else, they became an obsession for me. Before I knew it, I was grown up and obsessed with monsters and like creepy stuff. Mortal Kombat later ended up becoming one of my favorite franchises ever, and I was moving into horror stuff. Stuff a small part of me is still kind of shocked and rejectful about, but the sense of, you know, taming the beast is still there. I wasn't even aware of it until I actually put it in a rational thought. I think being at least a little bit aware of it somehow gets you to the point of doing the 360-degree turnaround and actually now domesticating the beast now. They also, people call it facing your shadow and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I don't know. Turning the wolf into a golden retriever now. Cherry picking the things that you used to have a specific reaction to and putting them into a pretty package now in a subconscious attempt to complete the circle of healing of but also of empowerment. Conquering fear and danger while making it harmonious and clean gives us the sensation of power over it, you know. It cannot harm us anymore. Taming the beast, as I've been saying over and over again, gives us our security back. Past mental wounds can become patterns of figurative stitches, for example. We end up externalizing those things somehow in many ways. Fake blood can tell a story of pain hidden deep inside, bleeding out. Artificial rot and darkness may stem from festering negative feelings repressed from our past, you know, a trauma repeated in our minds, eating us inside, rotting a part of your soul, you know. Memories of things long gone may turn into a fixation with ghosts haunted by their past lives and seeking redemption. Knowing these things can get you to start to get the idea of why Child's Play is your favorite franchise now. Why you obsessed with vampires and why Hot Topic was your go-to store for everything fashion in high school. You might have been just following trends, but you know, you never know. It's there's layers to everything. Just explore yourself a little bit. Try to see if you can pinpoint the reason Tim Burton is your favorite director. What made Slipknot such ear candy for you, or why? Oh, I mean, why do you feel you could do an entire university thesis about the hidden meaning of Silent Hill 2, regardless of the fact that you have never played a single title in the series ever? This all brings me to the very reason why I wanted to make this video overall, but I didn't know how to talk about it. And I had to find a way to do it. The success of Monster High dolls. I remember the reaction of my mom when she learned about them a couple of years ago. Being in a family of mostly women for generations, girly toys have been characterized by, I mean, well, very clean and plain and pretty soft, cuddly, and conventionally beautiful and pink and yeah. But now you have stitches and wolves and ghouls and guts following all the formula I just described during this very video. The perfect depiction of, the power trip. The visual example of taming the beast I have been going on and on and on about. Women have always had this other darker side of them as well as men since forever. I mean, that's yeah. But it was never truly represented in general popular culture in our modern era. And also, I don't know how successful a toy like that for girls would have worked in any other decade before. Gruesome imagery of the kind was exclusively reserved for boys, and even so, it only started to manifest itself the way that it did somewhere around like the early 50s as a result of them slowly creeping. You see what creeping, get it? Around the subconscious of the populace as early as like the 20s and 30s with movies like King Kong and Nosferatu and blah blah blah. We could go in full depth about all of that phenomenon and how it evolved to the state we all know it now, but that would be an entire video of its own. Fairy tales have always been a thing in every culture forever, and they always contain some form of, creepy beauty, some quality to them. But I feel that phenomena was distinctly different to the thing we'd recognize today. So that's why I'm not totally including it. The late 90s and early 2000s were the tipping point for a change in the popular subconscious overall in many things. But in this subject, when women grew up with the mindset of taming the beast. How many times have I been saying that? As I described, they've been doing that since forever too. Earlier, with their fashion, their music taste, in art, in beliefs, etc., etc., etc. But there was never a thing like this for them, like ever, like a thing, like like dolls, toys aimed for young girls like this. Coming back to what my mom thought about was when she was slightly shocked by a toy for little girls depicting such gruesome imagery in a very safe and aesthetic way, of course. But I mean, she wasn't shocked, like scandalized, but she was kind of weirded out. I mean, they're not that much of a big deal overall, but she was like, I don't know, she found it super, super, super unusual and just weird. It's not like such depiction of gruesome stuff for boys wasn't a scandal of its own. But now you saw that in dolls for little girls now also. It was kind of a small cultural impact as much as we kind of forget about it. And that's more of a personal thing. And I feel it was also a depiction of the times. Oh, obviously I wasn't a little girl in the early 2000s, but and and I wasn't even interested in like the dolls themselves at all. Also, I have a whole story about my relationship with like girly stuff. I went from casually playing with Barbie dolls with my nieces as a kid to then like growing up with the with the very normal like girly stuff is lame, like boyish mindset later on to like coming around as I aged and matured over the years, and I just started to understand things, and but anyways, not having experienced it in my own flesh in those times, I theorize that a huge part of the reason why that toy line in particular resonated so well, apart from just being the latest flashy fancy toy of the moment, the cultural landscape of the times might have had a might have something to do with its success. Sadly, actually, that might reflect the earlier sense in life to face fear in young women. to face harshness, a sense of feeling unprotected, uncertain, which was a phenomenon that was already, I think, for a while now, and you just needed a tipping point. You just needed something to come in and explode, reflect it, to actually resonate. Either we like it or not, naturally in our species, boys tend to be the first ones at having to be forced to face the fears of the world in early life. Women can choose if they decide that that's a thing that they want to do, to get out there and be a part of that first line of defense against, the dangers and, you know quote unquote monsters of life. But men don't really have that choice. There's not much point of you occupying the space that you're occupying if you can't, you know, tame the beast, as I've said for like the millionth time in this video. In life, tame the beast of life, if you want to call it out. Except, uh, women kind of don't really have that much of a choice nowadays to do it as early as it's been happening. They don't have to wait until later on in life when they're starting to like get a grasp of the world and start to understand those metaphorical monsters out there, like it used to be for the longest time, pretty much always, most for the most part. Nowadays the world is very demanding. It's a harsh place. It will eat you up. It's that furtive beast you have to tame for everybody else since very early on in life now. Men and women. You don't have time to really learn at your own pace in a more natural way and just kind of start to getting a grasp of things and have people teaching you and guiding you. There's no time. There's no time. You are exposed to issues of grown-ups when you're not even understanding who you even are yet. Issues for everybody are starting earlier than ever for like everybody. And I feel that's very personal. I feel it's very sad. But instead of victimizing ourselves and just like lay down, cry, and drown on red pills, I believe you can use this as an observation point, just to know where we have to act before little issues accumulate and just make a huge deal. We can't really fix the world without burning it all down to the ground up and to restart anew, because that would burn all of us to an extent, more or less. But we can fix our immediate surroundings from the inside out, and being aware of things is the first step into it. And being aware of things in general is the first step into it. Obviously, a little girl lacking a Monster High doesn't have to mean an inherent trauma or like something over the top like that, something super dramatic. But the thing is, other more conventional doll lines didn't pick up as well as that one did. There's also merchandising, advertising, overblown, like overdrive. Yeah, I understand that. You can also shrug it off to precisely the sheer novelty of it. But as I said earlier, I can't tell you if this line would have been as successful like a decade before, like 2, 3 decades before it blew up. I can't really tell you if just the novelty of it all would have been enough, like a decade, 2, 3 decades before, but it did. It was enough exactly in that period of time when it happened. Another thing might have been the fact that just For example, as I grew up playing with Barbie dolls with my nieces for a very short period of time in my very early childhood, girls, on the other hand, grew up exposed to boyish things more and more and more until they developed a sort of taste for them eventually. But still, it remains. There's so many reasons why you can pinpoint the very factors that came to be to make it successful, and most of them, if not all, might be accurate. But the subconscious meaning of a skeletal dark figure over, I don't know, natural rosy soft figure, it's something to consider because things like that still linger in our brains. Everything has a meaning. It might simply mean a subtle fear of, like, a lingering memory of something harsh that maybe happened, a fear. But overall, harmless in like the bigger picture, right? It doesn't have to be like super like terrible trauma or anything like that. But it can be a small thing that that may add up to create a bigger issue over time. Small issues create a terrible trauma later on. And it doesn't hurt to just be aware of it, to know how to listen when something might be happening around us. At all ages, in all scenarios. You don't have to be like a white knight in shiny armor or anything like that, nothing super over the top. You can just be somebody reliable that knows how to listen and knows themselves well enough to know what to do when asked, if even asked at all. I'm not really trying to go anywhere with this. I just had this lingering thought of my mind and I needed to get it out and present it in an interesting way, maybe, and leave it out there, you know. If anything, this is just an excuse for me to show off my collection of creepy beauty, if you want to call it that. Art I've done over the years. Yeah, I do these in my own art. It's pretty much my staple. Creepy beauty might be like a way to call it. It naturally became that whenever I made anything artsy. I can't really portray standard beauty, like for example, just depicting a picture of nature or something like that, because nature is already perfect. Nature is perfect, it's complete. I use my art to translate to the world, us, to filter what I see in a way that I can cope with, uh, so that I can make it like prettier. I can organize chaos. I can make it more orderly. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to put it in words. I can't do that in nature. I can't improve nature because I can't find a way to improve on something that I can't find anything broken about. Does that make sense? For me, art is therapeutic. It's a way to make sense of things. And if something already makes perfect sense, I can't touch it. It's like, I don't know. It doesn't really do anything anymore. Like, but the world, our world, is ugly. It's beautiful, but it's ugly. Ugliness is something you can actually improve. Now I can sink my teeth into that. It provokes me. It can actually get me inspired. Now I can play with that and do something. Oh yeah, that's Rosso, by the way. Ah, Rosso the clown. He has a girlfriend. Her name is Rosa. Get it? Because they're both pink. I haven't made her yet. I have it. I have the concept in my head. I've just never imprinted it anywhere. This is Miguel, Mini, Venado, Unicornio. I had Chucho, the pet, but I sold it years ago in Mexico City. I've never been in Mexico City, but I sold it there. Make that make sense. and I haven't made a new one because the original Minnie and Miguel. Guess where those names came from? Do you see it? Do you see it? I'll let you figure it out. It's very easy actually. Just look at them. Anyways, I made the original ones, I sold them, and I made new ones. Now those ones could be used for stop motion because for the original ones were rigid. There's more, but look at this guy. I've never finished it since last year. I need to finish it. There's way more, but yeah. Oh wait, there's the Smurfs, Pitufos. Yeah, the Smurfs. And there's these faces. And I don't know, it's too much. I don't want to show it all. Those are like some of my favorites. The classics, you might say. Anyways, bye.